economy, which is the category that we are using to cover our conversation about how dance, and in particular black dance, which is hold on just a moment. The category dance, and in particular black dance, were used to make money in this country, and black dancing and blackness are still used to make money in this country to this day. So one of the ways that we advertise things in this country is by making sort of a simplified, catchy version of it, right? Like, for example, a jingle. Can any of you guys, I know me too, Jack. I was like, what? Isn't that 2 weeks away? Can you guys think of a jingle that you remember? Go ahead and pop it into the chat or call it out. Any jingle at all, like an ad that you remember. While you're doing that, I'm going to pull up my visuals. Oh my goodness, there's so much good stuff to look at today. I'm so excited. Okay. Oh yes, the State Farm one. I think of that one all the time because they send me a lot of junk mail. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Yeah. Or I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid. That one's pretty stuck in my head. Actually, at Christmas time, one of my favorite things to do is to look on YouTube at old advertisements from my childhood because they're just so surreal. It's pretty fun because people have made montages. I recommend it. So go ahead and keep throwing in ideas or like jingles that catch in your head because I think it's funny to see what we remember. But one of the things that makes a jingle, like the idea behind a jingle or an advertisement or a political statement, is to make something that's simple enough that it sticks in your head. And then when other people want to catch your memory or make you feel comfortable, they can make reference to that. So we have like a song jingle or a stereotype that we tend to compound upon these things. And so another example of that might be a sports team, let's say the San Francisco Giants, since we're close to San Francisco. I don't think any of us think about Giants, right? When we think about that, which is odd, really. But we do think about team colors. So that's another way that you're giving a quick cue to the human mind to recognize something that's familiar. And that is also going to be true about dance and entertainment and signaling that we use to advertise what category of dance that we're in. So I'm trying to like wind this all back to blackface minstrelsy. So if you remember minstrelsy in general, we talked about last week how in the pre-antebellum times and in antebellum times, so that would be like, antebellum is like up to the Civil War. Pre-antebellum would be even before then. So if you're thinking about antebellum as being, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I generally think of antebellum as being like early United States of America up to the Civil War. Pre-antebellum would be like when we were still colonies of the British Empire. And in that time, we had early minstrelsy. So the Black people in America were in the South, and they couldn't make fun of the white people except in cakewalks, which we got to see at the end there. But white entertainers could steal their songs. Ah, plop, plop, piss, piss, oh, really, yes. Little, yellow, different. And so we have this hugely popular style of entertainment called minstrelsy, where you have white performers putting on blackface, singing melodies that did come from Black music and dances that did come from Black dance. but then exaggerated stereotype costuming. And two of the stereotypes that we talked about last week were Zip Coon and Jim Crow. And that these stereotypes were so well known that you would see them represented on many posters and advertisements for different shows and different touring companies in a way that would kind of let you know what sort of a show you might be going to see. And in today's world, one of the ways to think about this in a like non-racially centered way, just to understand the power of advertising, is when you think about if you're thinking about a sports team and all of the advertising that is going to that sports team's intended audience is going to replicate the colors of the team or show people wearing the colors of the team. And so even though you might be selling coffee, if you show a bunch of people going to the game in their sports team's color, like making a thermos of coffee to get to the parking lot party early, that would be a way that you're using you're using a visual cue to advertise, to make money off of some other cultural thing. And that was definitely done with Blackness in this country. And I think it's still done with Blackness. Some of the things that I think are sort of modern signifiers would be like a hoodie, right? Like, think about how loaded the idea of a young man with the hoodie up is, and how that causes problems with our policing, even though like everybody wears hoodies. In fact, I happen to be wearing a hoodie today. And yet there's something very powerful about the tying together of symbols that we're not even always aware of. So let's go ahead and dive into talking about what those symbols are. I'm going to take you to a website that is on your page. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Reconstruction and how it was great and then it got messed up. And then we're going to talk about dance. Okay, that's a lot. So we talked about circuses and then blackface minstrel shows. So remember, we had the white people doing blackface minstrelsy, and then we also had black people doing minstrel shows where they would basically be doing more authentic versions of the songs and dancing that came from their communities than the white people, because the white people shows were often like a bunch of vaudeville acts that just were like putting blackness on top so that they could sell it as a minstrel show. I need to pause here and say we're going to look at some really offensive blackface examples here. And if you need to pause, if you need to take a break and maybe like skip forward and not look at these images because they're triggering or upsetting, that's okay. Okay, I just want to lay that out here. But that said, this is a really amazing website. I think it does an excellent job of sort of showing how America thought that imitating Black people was sort of like this romantic Southern fantasy of the pastoral life during a time in our country where it's the industrial age, the second industrial age. But like everybody's moving to the city because it's hard to farm. It's really hard to farm. So people are moving to get factory jobs. And so this fantasy that if you worked on a farm, you have spare time to like fry fish and hang out and sing songs was part of what white people thought, and part of the way that they had denial about the horrors of chattel slavery. We're going to talk about a little bit about female impersonators, but also Stephen Foster. So Stephen Foster was a musician who wrote extremely famous popular songs that we think of now as being just like Americana. And remember, back in this time, you didn't have radio. Well, radio's beginning, but like when Stephen Foster was around, there was no radio yet to speak of. So songs would be shared via sheet music. So someone in your family would hopefully know how to play an instrument, and sheet music would be shared, especially in white communities, so that you could have, instead of a song played on the radio to make it popular, in Stephen Foster's time, you would get sheet music and play it at home. So he was a man who took melodies from Black Americans and then added words to them or changed the words to them and wrote sheet music, and they became so popular. In fact, I have like a real prop by accident. My mom sent this book that she found. It's just like an old children's book. It says The Music Hour, second book. And it's, what is this? It is, oh, it's pretty cute actually. Let me stop share for a second. So it's these little old illustrations, right? And music. And this is supposed to be kids' songs by the time this book is printed, but it's not just. Oh, we got some yellow face in that pony picture. And the reason why I say this is because at the time of Stephen Foster, there was like absolutely nothing in people's awareness about appropriation or realizing that they were making stereotypes. People just actually thought that these were good generalizations for humans in general. And this is a time in America by the end of the Civil War where people are really fighting for basic human rights. So in 1849, you have the Seneca meeting where women try and start talking about not being treated like second-class citizens, and those women go on to help to fight to abolish slavery. In 1863, we have, let me pull up visuals. Getting a little bit askew here, but that's okay. So 1863, we have the Emancipation Proclamation. 2 years later, 2 whole entire years later, we have Juneteenth, which is when the slaves in Texas were read the Emancipation Proclamation. And so the Texas slaves and many of the slaves further into the middle parts of America did not know that slavery had ended for 2 years. And why was this? This was because the slave owners wanted to get another couple of years of free labor out of them. And that is part of why we celebrate Juneteenth. We have a picture here of Frederick Douglass, which there is I think it's an HBO, it's either HBO or PBS documentary that's being done right now with a bunch of really famous actors reading his speeches. Frederick Douglass changed the way that Americans thought about Black men in particular, but Black people, because he was such an extraordinary speechwriter. And so he gave speeches all over and really helped to form the basis of the way that we think about racism and segregation and inequality in this country. And is there anything else we want to cover from this just now? So after Emancipation, which was when Black slaves were supposedly freed, then we had actually a very good era in the South. Where's that cute map? That the Northern armies remained in the South after the end of the Civil War in order to make sure that the slaves were freed and that order remained under the United States of America in the South, because there was still a lot of resistance against this. This is when the Ku Klux Klan begins to form. And as long as those Northern armies remained in the South during this era called Reconstruction, right? Because they're rebuilding the Southern states after a really quite vicious, terrible war. Black men were given the right to vote, and part of that is due to Frederick Douglass speaking to the American government about how to handle Reconstruction and saying that voting rights are paramount. Black men took many political offices, both like small, local in their cities and towns, but also became senators during this time. And basically things were going really well for Black Americans in the South until the end of Reconstruction, which was marked when the armies that were stationed in the South to keep this peace left, and those soldiers finally went home. And this was at least partially due to a political election where they had a super close election between the Democrats and the Republicans. And remember, the Republicans at that time were the more left and more liberal group. So the Republicans had basically made an agreement with the other politicians that in this really close call election, their president would get elected, and that like all of Congress would agree, okay, yeah, you guys won. But in exchange for that, they finally sent the troops home from the South. And after that is when all of the laws started popping up for what we call Jim Crow, aptly named, and segregation became a legal battle, and civil rights in the South like just got demolished. So let's talk about Jim Crow. And this is another page from this fabulous website, blackface.com. And one of the pages that is linked, this is in your module, is this list of racist Black stereotypes with little images next to it. And I think it's really helpful because even though it's painful to look at these stereotypes of real human beings who are being treated like essentially animals or objects by these stereotypes, is that it really helps us to recognize when racist stereotypes are occurring in our art or culture. And if you are not a Black person, you might not realize that you are being stereotyped or put in a box, or that people are talking about you and your culture in a way that shuts you down or makes you less human or simplifies you, which is what stereotypes do. But each of us is connected to some sort of stereotype. And so you probably recognize the stereotypes that are used against you personally, but maybe not the stereotypes that are used against other people. So I'm a white woman, and so white women are supposed to be Karens a lot of the time, right? And that doesn't mean that there aren't Karens in the world. We all know that there are definitely Karens in the world. As a dancer, there are stereotypes about dancers, female dancers, that either perhaps I am like when I was younger, it doesn't happen so much now that I'm a fully grown woman, but when I was in my 20s and 30s, I would have to add on to introducing my job. So instead of saying I'm a dancer, I would say I'm a professor of dance, or I teach dance, or I teach contemporary modern dance, because the implication and the stereotype, if I just, had sparkly barrettes on and said I'm a dancer, is that people would assume that I was maybe a stripper. And that connection of sexual availability and dancing we will get to later on. So can you guys throw out some other stereotypes into the chat or speaking up as we go here? Stereotypes that you or your family are saddled with. And then I'm going to go on here and go down this page real quick. So Jim Crow, remember we saw that clip from a movie talking about the probably true, the legend, I guess we'll say, of where Jim Crow came from, which is that white minstrel met Jim on the street, stole his dance moves, borrowed his clothes, and left him naked off stage, watching him. That's where Jim Crow came from, and the song Jump Jim Crow. Zip Coon is a stereotype of a black man who is dressing up, like dressing really in a classy but often exuberantly flashy style. And remember, we talked about in the elements of cool that in Africanist cultural values keep this exuberance in color and texture of clothing, so you can be like super loudly fashionable and that you're still cool on top of that. And so that Africanist element is actually like has been stereotyped into the Zip Coon stereotype. But Zip Coon is usually also a con man or someone who might sleep with your white wife, right? So that's a very rude thing to say, but that is what the stereotype is. So Mammy would be like, this image is probably directly from the maple syrup bottle. Mammy was a stereotype of a black woman who was a mother or grandmother who, doesn't let you talk back and generally is wise. And the Whitman sisters really took that Mammy stereotype and flipped it by giving her really emotional depth in their lyrics in the shows. And so that instead of just being like, you got to do the right thing and it's all going to be okay, and therefore like basically whitewashing or erasing racism, Mammy in the Whitman sisters shows would also say things like, horrible atrocities are happening to me and my people, but in a song way. Uncle Tom is basically kind of like your reciprocal stereotype to Mammy. It's like a grandfather who's playing music, also wise, but not necessarily educated. Buck, it's interesting because we have been talking about buck dancing in this class, right? And this is going to be true of a lot of the things that we talk about in terms of stereotypes, which is sometimes words for stereotypes are used in positive and negative manners. And it doesn't mean that it's not a stereotype. It doesn't mean that it's 100% harmful or 100% not harmful. So Buck is a large black man. He's usually proud. He could be a bully, definitely like a sexual threat to white women, right? Because remember, we're talking about a white audience watching Black minstrelsy here. So a lot of the time that like threat to white women is a theme about these racist stereotypes. The Jezebel or wench would be usually a really mean woman who has like trapped, quote unquote, the males in the play or performance into marriage or money or whatever. And they were often played by a white man in blackface. And usually there's a lot of jokes about their big mouth with big teeth and vagina dentata. Like, it was pretty brutal and disgusting, this wench Jezebel stereotype. Mulattoes. Now, mulatto is not a bad word, but there is a stereotype as the mulatto woman who's always mixed blood and like she gets caught out, and there are misogyny laws. So if you were in the South when did the misogyny laws go? Post antebellum, it was legal to be a mixed race marriage. And so if you were married in the South in a mixed race marriage, you could either be sent to jail or you could be sent to jail and your partner could be... Anyway, Showboat, the musical, which is one of the first musicals in our country, is about this question of misogyny and mixed raceness. And also pickaninny is the... this term actually comes, remember, from vaudeville. So pickaninnies are the child performers in vaudeville acts, and that would be small vaudeville. And also, remember when we talked about the Whitman sisters, they had loads of child dancers and singers, and those were called pickaninnies at the time. But you can see how there's a stereotyped vision of these, right? They have nappy hair and big eyes and giant mouths and etc. All of the horrifying stereotypes that you've come to expect. So there's lots of deep dive in this website if you want to get down and see more of the horrors of our racism, and also some conversations about blaxploitation films, cartoon representations, and even memes. And I think that gives us something to start with there. So what we want to recognize, remember last time we talked a little bit about how Black minstrelsy had no choice but to perform these stereotypes in many ways, also because they couldn't make comedy about other races. They weren't allowed to, right? White people could make fun of Black people, but Black people could only make fun of themselves. And so we end up with that theme of embracing the conflict, another Dixon Gottschalk Africanist element, where blackface minstrels recognized that they had no choice but to like do what sold on stage, and so they would often like layer in irony. So even if they were dressing up as a pimp, aka Zip Coon, they would be doing it with sort of what we call a self-consciousness. So you know that you're making fun of yourself at the time that you're doing it. Ooh, yes, Jack, that's right. Pulling your eyes to, yeah. So, where are we going with this comment? We are going to switch modes into some pleasantries. Do you guys have any questions about that? I guess that's really my question. Do you have any questions about the way that stereotypes are used to basically sell art or products? And if not, then let's talk a little bit about tap. Okay, going back to share screen. Feel free to write me a question. Okay, so tapping. We've talked a few times about the roots of tap. This is an authentic buck dancing from 1894. So you have the really downward heavy steps. You can see that he's making percussive movements as he's moving. Pretty awesome flip. This guy's playing a harmonica at the same time. Those dance movements, remember, they mixed with Irish step dancing. We aren't going to watch a lot of this, but I just want to give you a moment.
Never let me cross your mind, your heart. You love
so this is called flat footing.
Leave me, darling, I don't mind talking to me, banjo.
And then this guy does something called clogging. Now these are all forms of tap. I don't want to see this guy. Let's look at the dancer. Cameraman.
Leave me, little darling.
Scooch over here. So, clogging remains a bit heavier, but you can also see how this guy's really upright here, and he's got a lot more of the like jumpy bits that we see in Irish step dancing. So these are two of the American, especially these developed in Appalachia, forms of tap dancing that mixed with buck dancing. Where is, oh, sorry, it's over here, to become tap as we know it when we think about Bojangles, for example. So I'm not sure if you guys watch
Hi,
this.
I'm Karen Birthright.
I'm Garrett Coleman. I'm Jason Aramis.
And we are cast members of Paradise Square the Musical here at Berkeley Rep. This is a little tidbit of how we and the creative team thought that 150 years ago, African American and Irish American rhythms melded together in the 5 points. We're running here till March 3rd, so get your tickets now and come see us.
This is an old video, so sorry. But they're on Broadway now. I'm so proud of them. So you can see these two gentlemen in the back are world champion Irish step dancers. And the woman in the front is demonstrating movements from the African diaspora. So now they're starting to mix them together. So the rhythms that she's got, and now we've changed into that like drop down stance. And so these are the co-choreographers of the musical. And that's how they envision this blend of dance moves started. There's my pop out. And then you end up with, where are you? I'm going to take you to Bojangles. So,
come on, boys, let's play this stuff.
oh, that's right, he's after this band. So we have this band performing on this boat, and then this is actually Bojangles, comes in and taps. And this is a form of tapping which was pre-hard shoe. So what they do to make a noise is that you put sand down on the ground. So instead of like a hard tap sound, you get that.
When a boat jockey Memphis, you should get yourself a job in one of the Beale Street cafes. Boy, you've been reading my mind. Watch me go to Beale Street.
You got some ephebism here, right? Super high energiness. You can also see Bojangles' dance style is very upright. In this movie, because this is a song in a movie musical, his character is more downtrodden than he normally performed as. Boop, boop, boop. Where are you at, Bojangles? Here we go. This is the actual stair dance. He's probably a bit older when this video was made, but this is the one which changed tap forever. So you can see how his body is very upright and held still in a way that we think of as being a bit more Western Eurocentric, right? You can see that there's both stairs up and stairs down. And it's not very clear from this audio recording, but each stair had a slightly different audio tone. Right, so there is Bojangles being a gentleman. And trying to see if there's anything else on our list that I want to make sure we get through. I think that is it for this. All the links we went through today are in your module. So that said, you're going to have an in-depth tap. Try it yourself. But let's stand up for a little bit. And let's end today's class. We got 10 minutes with just trying out some tap steps. So you don't need tap shoes, but I just wanted to show you what tap shoes nowadays look like. These are split-soled tap shoes, so there's no hardness in the bottom, and that's so that you can point and go up on your toes more easily. But you can see that there are two metal taps that are installed with screws to the bottom of the shoe. So in olden days, you would either have a clog, which would be a wooden tap on the front and back of your shoe, which would often just be that you were wearing a clog, right, which has a wooden sole. Or sometimes you've seen in movies perhaps that people like put bottle caps or coins attached to the bottom of their shoe to make some sound. So we're just going to do some of our tap vocabulary. So go ahead and stand on up, please. And let's just have some fun. All right. So first off, just go ahead and walk around in your little space in a little time, or just march it out in place. Put my tap shoes on, and I just want to tell you that I am definitely a beginner tapper, so I'm not going to give you a most excellent performance here by any means, but just walking out in space. So some of the vocabulary that we've already talked about includes the term step, right? A dance step could be like a thing that requires a few different things at a time to happen, like a pirouette. A pirouette is always going to have one high bent leg. It could be turned out or parallel. Or you could have a step be a step where you're just moving your body, right? So step is a confusing word in that way because it can refer to many things together or just one thing at a time. In tap, because step can mean something more complicated or something more simple, we use the words stamp and stomp. And the word stomp has an O in it, and that O we use it to remind you of 0, meaning there's no weight in the leg. So let's do a stomp with your foot. So let's just go stomp, 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 stomp. I'm trying to find the right spot. Ooh, it's slipping in here for you guys to see my feet a little better. Maybe this is, here we go. Okay. So stomp, 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 stomp. Or I'm going to do 3 stomps and then stamp on it, which means I've put my weight into it. And then I'm going to do 3 stomps. Stomp, 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 stamp. Stomp, 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 stamp. Now let's just go for a little walk. These are all stamps because they all take weight. All right, let's try toe taps. I'm going to even leave my heel on the floor and just tap my toe. Now, if you are in your socks on the carpet, you don't get to make these fun noises. So it might be fun to just try them. Try a hard floor later. You can also do heel drops. Yeah? So let's go. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm just going to do a toe tap. So I've got weight out of that leg and I'm tapping the toe, but my heel's off the ground. So I'm going to go 3 and stamp, and 3 and stamp, and 3 and stamp, 3 and stamp. 1, 2, 3, stamp. 1, 2, 3, stamp. And you notice that stamp lets me switch legs. And then go ahead and try doing it harder. And then try really tiny, and really light. So one of the things about Bojangles' tap style is that he did a lot of work that was really small, right? So his feet are really close to the ground, and this helps him stay more smooth on the top, yeah? Let's try toe, heel, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe, heel. I'm going to turn sideways so you can see a little better. Toe, heel, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe, heel. Okay, now I'm going to do toe, toe, heel, heel. Toe, toe, heel, heel. Toe, toe, heel, heel. Can we do a little bit faster? Same thing. Toe, toe, heel, heel. Toe, toe, heel, heel. Toe, toe, heel, heel. Toe, toe, heel, heel. Try it starting with the other side. Toe, toe, heel, heel. Toe, toe, heel, heel. Toe, toe, heel, heel. Toe, toe, heel, heel. Okay, now we're going to try this super fast. Let's make it maybe twice as fast. I'm going to say that this is your right leg, so I look like a mirror to you, and we're going to do that step. Toe, toe, heel, heel. I'm going to get a little faster. One of the challenges about tap is precision in timing. Not my forte. Let's get faster. And now when you get super fast and do it almost all at once, it becomes what's called a cramp roll. And you can hear how mine is like got a little weird delay in the heels. That's how you know that I'm not very good at it, but it's okay. I'm just gonna keep practicing because that's how you get good. sounds like when you're a kid and you're making galloping noises. Okay, let's try something else. Got 3 more minutes. Let's do a shuffle ball change. So just shuffle. We're going to do 3 and then switch legs. Shuffle is where you swing your leg out from the knee and back in. And I'm moving my little ankle a little bit so that it touches the floor and touches the floor. Shuffle, 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 stamp. Shuffle, 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 stamp. It really helps to learn tap noises and any dance by saying the words in your head. That's how you memorize and learn more quickly. Shuffle, 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 stamp. Okay, let's try 4 and 4. So 3 stamp and 3 step. Shuffle, 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 stamp. Shuffle, 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 stamp. Shuffle, 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 stamp. That's right, Adriana Shirley Hill totally danced with those ankles. From the back, shuffle, 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 stamp. Shuffle, 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 stamp. Shuffle, just 1, stamp. Shuffle, stamp. Notice when I have tap shoes on, if I don't put my whole foot down at once to make 1 noise, I can accidentally make 2. Yeah? Stamp, toe heel. Stamp, toe heel. Shuffle, ball, change. Okay? I'm going to go shuffle, then I'm going to put my weight into just the ball of my foot, and I'm going to change my weight so I can stay on that same side. Shuffle, ball, change. Shuffle, ball, change. Shuffle, ball, change. Now, I recommend laughing at yourself a lot while you're learning tap because it's much more fun, let's switch sides, to laugh when you goof up than it is to beat yourself up. So, shuffle, ball, change. I'm going to try walking it to the side. Shuffle, ball, change. 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 Stamp. Shuffle, ball, change. Shuffle, ball, change. Shuffle, ball, change. Shuffle, ball, change. Yeah? Let's try that one more time. 4 and 4 a little bit faster just to wrap us up for the day. All right, here we go, right leg. 5, 6, 7, 8. Shuffle, ball, change, shuffle, ball, change, shuffle, ball, change, shuffle, stamp. Shuffle, ball, change, shuffle, ball, change, shuffle, ball, change, shuffle, stamp. Shuffle. I keep stepping on it instead of doing a shuffle and a ball. Shuffle, ball, change, shuffle, ball, change, shuffle, change, shuffle, stamp. Shuffle, ball, change, shuffle, ball, change, shuffle, ball, change, shuffle, stamp. There, see, I promised you I was not a very advanced tapper, but hopefully you had fun with that. Yay, I think it's super fun. So maybe, this week when you're standing in line or looking in the fridge, wondering what you're going to chew on, you can just stand there and be like, yeah. Hopefully that was fun with and illuminating. Any questions before I head on out to cardio dance class? All good? Let's go ahead and check out. And thank you. Thank you for joining.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.